How to start Pictomancer in Final Fantasy XIV and understand it. You can start the Pictomancer questline in Gridania, get pulled in by this enthusiastic little guy, do a tutorial mission, and end up with all of this. Maybe I should have taken that art class in school. Hey, it's Philmeyer. By the end of this video, I hope you walk away with a good understanding of Pictomancer. Final Fantasy's first Pictomancer was the spirited and gifted realm introduced in Final Fantasy VI. Her legacy now carries on into Final Fantasy XIV. The Pictomancer weaves together both art and ether to bring their visions to life on the battlefield. The Pictomancer's arsenal includes very powerful spells that require planning and preparation. This playstyle rewards deliberate and patient players. Let's start with the easy stuff first, and then we'll get into attack rotations and strategy. Being a DPS caster, a Pictomancer has access to the core abilities from that class. I'll touch on these in the video, but I won't go in depth. If you've played another caster before, you should already have a handle on these. First, Pictomancer has an instant cast shield called Tempera coat, which absorbs an amount of incoming damage. If the shield is completely absorbed before it expires, the time needed to recast it will be reduced. This means that an optimal opportunity to use this skill is when you know that you're about to take unavoidable damage. Pictomancer also has a targetless gap closer called Smudge. This will dash you forward, allowing you to get out of danger and into safety quickly. The Pictomancer's main attack rotation involves its colored elemental spells Aetherhues. This begins with Fire in Red, or its area attack variation Fire 2 in Red. You can slot both of these onto your hotbar. Casting Fire in Red grants you Aetherhues, which transforms both red spells into Arrow in Green. Casting either green spell replaces Aetherhues with Aetherhues 2, which will transform both green spells into Water and Blue. Finally, casting either blue spell does three things. It will remove Aetherhues 2, returning your blue spells back to red. It will also add colored paint to your palette gauge, along with one charge of white paint. We'll talk about both of those in a moment. Each spell in this sequence is slightly more powerful than the one before it, with red being the weakest and blue the strongest. Let's focus on that colored palette gauge next. After you've accumulated enough color on your palette gauge, you will be able to activate the Subtractive Palette ability, which when used will consume color from your palette and grant you 3 stacks of the Subtractive Palette buff. While under the effect of Subtractive Palette, your standard additive colored spells will become disabled, and instead the Subtractive colored spells become enabled. Subtractive spells begin with Blizzard in Cyan and Blizzard 2 in Cyan, which should be slotted onto your hotbar. The Subtractive spells work similarly in that casting each spell in the sequence grants or consumes Aetherhues to morph the spells into the next color. Each spell cast also consumes 1 stack of Subtractive Magic, meaning that casting the third spell will exhaust Subtractive Magic, returning you back to the additive colors, disabling the Subtractive spells. The final Subtractive spell, Magenta, also grants you a charge of white paint upon casting, just like the blue spells in additive magic. All the Subtractive spells are slower to cast than the additive spells, but they are also more powerful, dealing more damage over time. So to summarize your basic attack rotations, you can attack single or group targets using the additive magic sequence red, green, and blue. During strategic moments, enable Subtractive Magic to do even more damage over time. It is worth noting that you can enable Subtractive Magic at any point of the additive magic sequence. Doing so will leave you at the same step in the Subtractive Magic sequence, since both chains share the Aetherhue buff requirements. So if you wanted to, you could cast the additive red then green spells, switch to Subtractive Magic, and then cast Magenta. Something I'd also like to point out, because I think it's cool, is that the additive magic spells use the primary colors of light, red, green, and blue, which when paired with each other will make cyan, yellow, and magenta the subtractive colors. The concept is that Pictomancers employ additive magic to infuse color onto their palettes, blending hues to create new color spells. Now let's talk about those white paint charges we've been accumulating. Each charge of white paint allows you to cast Holy in White, which is an instant cast spell that does solid damage to your target, along with splash damage to surrounding enemies. Since this can be cast instantly, it means that the spell can also be cast while you are moving. So one strategy I'd recommend is to conserve some amount of white paint for when you need to be moving on the battlefield. This makes better use of time since your core additive and subtractive spells take more time to cast and require you to be stationary. So that's how a Pictomancer uses color magic. Let's next talk about motifs, muses, and all those crazy portraits you'll end up painting. I'll give you an upfront overview on their mechanics, and then we'll get into detail on each one. Pictomancer has 3 motif abilities, creature, weapon, and landscape, which you can slot onto your hotbar. When you do slot them onto your hotbar, they will instantly change into other motif abilities, Palm, Hammer, and Starry Sky, respectively. Each motif is paired with a Muse ability, Living Muse, Steel Muse, and Scenic Muse, again, respectively. These should also be slotted onto your hotbar. Each time you use one of the motif abilities, it does several things. First, you'll paint a portrait onto the matching canvas. Each portrait serves as a charge for your Muse abilities. Your Muse abilities will then also enable and morph into usable abilities. Using a Muse ability consumes its portrait from the canvas, disabling the Muse and eventually re-enabling the motif. If this seems a little convoluted, it's probably because it is, but really what this is doing is dividing the use of these abilities into two different stages. First, there's the preparation stage, which is using one of the motif abilities to paint a portrait. Each painting has a long cast time, but it provides you a charge that can then be used at a later time. Each of the corresponding Muse abilities can then be used instantly, not requiring any cast time. So the idea is that during opportune moments, you can charge up your canvases, which gets your Muse abilities ready for use. It's also worth mentioning that outside of battle, all the motifs can be used instantly, and since the canvases do not expire with time, you should definitely be sure to pre-charge those canvases anytime you are not in battle. Also, for those of you who join a duty instance with a Pictomancer, be sure to give them a few moments before engaging the enemy so they can prepare their canvases. Now that we understand how motifs and canvases provide you with a way to pre-charge your abilities, let's next look at what those abilities are. Landscape Motif is matched with Scenic Muse. Both of these should be slotted onto your hotbar. Starry Sky Motif paints the landscape canvas, which morphs Scenic Muse into Starry Muse and enables the action. Starry Muse will increase damage done by you and nearby party members for a short amount of time. It also grants you the Subtractive Spectrum buff, which allows you to activate the Subtractive palette without consuming your palette gauge. So the best time to use Starry Muse is when you and party members are firmly on the offensive and ready to do some heavy damage. At level 82, Starry Muse will do even more. Even though the focus of this video is for your initial loadout at level 80, I think it's best to talk about this now as you'll quickly acquire this enhancement. When cast at level 82 or higher, Starry Muse will grant you 5 stacks of Hyperphantasia when it is cast. This does more than one thing. First, Starry Muse will paint a landscape ring on the ground at your feet. When standing inside the ring, you will be granted the Inspiration buff, which reduces the cast time for your Aetherhues spells. However, when you do cast one of these spells, it will consume 1 stack of Hyperphantasia. So, after you exhaust Hyperphantasia by casting 5 spells, or it just expires, whichever comes first, the landscape ring will vanish. Weapon Motif is matched with Steel Muse and Hammer Stamp. These should be slotted onto your hotbar. Hammer Motif paints a hammer on your weapon canvas, which morphs Steel Muse into Striking Muse and enables it. When activated, Striking Muse grants you 3 stacks of Hammer Time. Hammer Time will expire after a short duration if you do not use them. Hammer Time enables Hammer Stamp, which will do critical direct hits to your target, along with splash damage to nearby enemies. Hammer Stamp looks like a melee attack, but it isn't. It actually has the same range as your Aetherhue color magic. So, a good use for this ability is to opportunistically and quickly deal powerful group damage. Lastly, let's talk about Creature Motif, which along with its matching abilities is the most complex. This is matched with Living Muse and Mog of the Ages, which should also be slotted onto your hotbar. When first slotted onto the hotbar, Creature Motif becomes Palm Motif. Using Palm Motif will paint a Moogle Palm onto the creature canvas and also transforms Living Muse into Palm Muse and enables it. Palm Muse is an instant cast spell that deals a large amount of damage to your target, along with additional splash damage to any nearby enemies. In addition, casting Palm Muse will move the palm onto the small canvas above the creature canvas. This is a partial charge for Mog of the Ages. Casting Palm Muse then also changes Creature Motif into Wing Motif. Wing Motif works about the same way as Palm Motif. When you use it, you'll paint a depiction of wings onto the creature canvas, which then also changes Living Muse into Wing Muse. Wing Muse performs the same attack as Palm Muse, and also combines the portrait of wings on the creature canvas with the previously painted palm to create a complete Moogle portrait. It also returns Creature Motif to Palm Motif. This Moogle depiction, in addition to being really adorable, acts as a charge for Mog of the Ages, allowing you to use that ability. Mog of the Ages is another instant cast ability that will fire in a line towards your target, doing significant damage, along with additional damage to any enemies beyond it. This ability group could be confusing at first, so let's go over it one more time with simpler commentary. Use Palm Motif to paint a palm on your canvas. This enables Palm Muse. Use Palm Muse for an instant area attack, which then also enables Wing Motif. Use Wing Motif to paint wings on your canvas, which also morphs and enables Wing Muse. Now use Wing Muse, which combines the wings and palm into a Moogle. This enables Mog of the Ages. You can then cast Mog of the Ages whenever opportunity strikes. Alright, that was a lot to get out. Now that we've gone over Pictomancer's abilities, I'd like to give you a pointer on strategy. With several of Pictomancer's spells being a bit on the slow side, specifically painting those motifs, they would make good candidates for chaining with Swiftcast. However, the motifs also have long cooldowns and sit on the global queue, so even with Swiftcast you'll be waiting for the cooldown expiration. So what I think makes this combo more useful is to follow up a swifted motif cast with an off-global instant cast spell such as Palm Muse. That way you can better make use of time while waiting for your global cooldown to expire. So that was my Pictomancer primer. I hope this guide helped kickstart you in artistic magic, or gave you a good refresher on its core kit. There will be more to Pictomancer at higher levels, and if I end up creating more content for the job, I'll be sure to link it here in the end card. Thanks for watching the video, and like always, keep adventuring and take care.